in Donald Trump's presidency, Andrew, and as is the case with so much in the United States today, there are really two definitions of what we've seen in the last few hours. Both of them make history. One interpretation is that Donald Trump is a strong leader taking command of a situation and quelling what are protests now at a scale we haven't seen in more than 50 years since the assassination of Martin Luther King roiled the nation. At the same time, we have somebody cracking down on civil rights in a way that goes against his own rhetoric. Just as he was defending the rights of people to be peacefully protesting, Lafayette Park over the road from the White House was being cleared out with crash bang grenades and tear gas and rubber bullets so the president could walk over the street for a photo opportunity in front of a church. This is a remarkable and historic day, Andrew, one that will define Donald Trump's presidency, even though that definition may differ from person to person.
So, further to that, John, of course, it is your definition of leadership, depending perhaps on partisan politics in the United States. What did you make of his threat to not just the protesters, but effectively the state governors, that he would send in the military if they did not succeed in quelling these protests?
We'll just have to see, Andrew, whether this becomes more than simply a threat. If it's acted upon, if President Trump orders US military personnel into states to quell unrest, protests, violence, looting and arson, if he does it without the invitation of state governors, that will be unconstitutional and it will be seen as the action of an authoritarian, if not a dictator. It's a power that is not exercised traditionally by presidents. The National Guard, which is like a state-based equivalent of our Army Reserve, if you will, that is the fallback force for these state governors and city officials if their local police are not able to manage a situation. The National Guard has in the past, particularly during the Civil Rights era and the Vietnam War protest era, there have been occasions when presidents, including John F. Kennedy and Richard Nixon, have federalised the National Guard to take command, but sending active US forces in against US citizens in American cities is something you haven't seen in 200 years. We'll just have to wait and see if it actually happens. If it does, it will be a major moment.
And John, at a distance, it looks as though these protests have pushed the COVID-19 crisis off the agenda. Is that the case?
I think it's important to remember, Andrew, that these protests are in protest at the police and their excessive use of force against African Americans and minorities generally, as well as George Floyd last week in Minneapolis. But this is also a protest at the impact that the coronavirus pandemic and the economic destruction it has wrought has had disproportionately on the African American and minority community. They are the workers who kept going to work, who kept risking their lives and have died at disproportionate levels in the last 3 months in the United States. They feel as though they've borne the brunt of that. They're suffering the economic as well as the health impact. And on top of that, they're being targeted in the lonely streets of shut-down American cities by their own police forces. This is why we're seeing such an outpouring of rage over the last 7 days.
John, great to talk to you. Thanks very much. That's John Barron, Planet America host. In other news, the federal court has ruled that the 2011 live cattle export ban imposed by the Gillard government was unlawful. Just apologies, having a few technical issues there. The National Farmers Federation says today's court ruling has righted a wrong. Chief Executive Tony Marr says the agricultural community has been vindicated.
The agricultural community, live exporters, rural and regional businesses and communities that depend on them have been vindicated. And we've had a great outcome from the courts that have recognised the reckless decision made by the then government that decimated and devastated an agricultural industry and the live export industry in parts of rural and regional Australia. Today we thank the Australian Farmers Fighting Fund for their commitment and support to this case. Is a demonstration of what agriculture can do as a community when we stand united. Today righted a wrong that was committed in 2011 by the then government, and we are extremely pleased, delighted that the courts have decided that that was a reckless decision and that farmers, agricultural community have been vindicated today.
We suffered immense financial hardship because of this. So much stress. It was overwhelming at times, but we knew that we what had happened was wrong, and that we just had to keep going.
Queensland's Deputy Premier has apologised to the family of a man who authorities said died with coronavirus. 30-year-old Nathan Turner initially returned a positive test. Now an autopsy has revealed he did not have COVID-19.
Our ability to control this virus requires us to respond rapidly to every single positive test. We have to treat every positive test as though it is a positive case. However, I would like to personally apologise to his partner and his family for any distress that our actions in responding rapidly have caused them. The loss of any life, particularly a life so young, is incredibly sad. I know it's been incredibly distressing for them, and to have to grieve under these circumstances, under this level of scrutiny, in some cases in quarantine, has only compounded that tragedy and their grief, and to them I am so deeply sorry. I do understand that this has been distressing for the Blackwater community, and I want to thank them for how cooperative they've been in assisting us. Many of them got tested. I know that many of them have been reaching out to support this man's family and his partner, and we hope that in the very least this can provide them some relief that there isn't a COVID-19 case in Blackwater.
A preschool in Melbourne's northeast has been closed for deep cleaning after a kindergarten teacher tested positive to COVID-19. The teacher at McLeod Preschool was tested after developing symptoms and is now in self-isolation. The case is one of 10 new virus infections recorded in Victoria, which also includes a staff member at the Embracia Aged Care Home in Reservoir in the city's north. Deputy Chief Health Officer Annalise Van Diemen says all staff and residents at the facility are being tested today.
We know the aged care sector has been exceedingly vigilant, which is exactly what we want them to be, and their staff are clearly doing the same thing. The second they get symptoms, they're being tested. As we've all said, we know there are cases in the community, we know there's going to be cases and there's going to be outbreaks, and that's why we want people to keep getting tested, and we want to find these cases. We'd much rather find a case and put circles around it via contact tracing than not know these cases existed.
Tasmania is relaxing coronavirus restrictions early to allow more movement around the state this long weekend. The state was due to move to stage 2 of its recovery on June the 15th, but many restrictions will now be lifted from 3 o'clock this Friday. Up to 20 people will be allowed to gather indoors and outdoors, and restaurants, gyms and beauty salons can serve up to 20 customers at a time. There have been no new cases for 17 days in Tasmania, and the state now has just 4 active cases.
I know that many businesses are hurting, and many businesses will welcome these changes. But the most important thing that we need to do is to step back into this sensibly, responsibly, and importantly that we all use our common sense. We've put in place the building blocks. We have contact tracking and tracing available and rapid response. Tasmanians, if you haven't, please download the COVID Safe app. But importantly, continue to follow the rules, continue to use common sense, and we will be able to step out of this and continue to have the very good result that we have had to date. In terms of obviously stage 3 restrictions, by nature of the announcement today, they will move forward as well, and we will be reviewing towards the end of June.
The New South Wales Government will allow gyms, dance studios, yoga and indoor pools to reopen across the state on the 13th of June. Classes will be capped at 10 people with a maximum of 100 people per venue. Community sport for juniors will resume on the 1st of July. 6 new cases of the virus were recorded in New South Wales in the past 24 hours. All were acquired from overseas travellers.
We will see a lot more movement in the next few weeks. Now, the community might say, well, why can't you do everything today? The short answer is I, as Health Minister, and Dr Chand, as Chief Health Officer, want to be able to see how each of these opening up moves impact on the transmission rates. So it is wise to be careful. I'm sure the community, having been through what they've been through in the last 4 months, don't want to see an outbreak in any area through transmission, and that might occur. It's wise to be careful.
Last summer's fire season was the biggest coordinated interstate and international firefighting effort in Australia's history. The Natural Disaster Royal Commission has heard evidence about the resources that were called in to deal with multiple fire fronts across Australia. The Commission is investigating whether paid and volunteer firefighters have enough resources to deal with the increasing pressures that come with each summer season. Political reporter Anna Henderson has the details.
Well, Andrew, an extraordinary effort over the last fire season, which spanned far further back from summer and forward from there. 7,000 people from across Australia and the world were called in to deal with the different fires as they emerged. A mammoth effort, as you say, and something that obviously requires a great deal of coordination to try and work out how to interlace those international and interstate efforts with what was already in place in each state and territory.
Okay, now another issue as far as resources is concerned is that the northern and southern hemisphere fire seasons tend to be overlapping. Of course, Australia has relied on help from overseas. So what have the agencies had to say about that?
Well, let's hear from the agency itself, talking to the Royal Commission this morning, explaining at this point there is no need to worry about the crossover between the two hemispheres, but the fire seasons are getting closer and closer together, and there could be issues with mobilising aircraft and other deployments as time goes on.
That's an ongoing discussion that we have with both Canada and the United States. It hasn't impacted directly on availability to the current point in time, but it's something we're all conscious of. What it does, with a secondary impact, if you like, when people make those deployments, or in fact for when Australian firefighters make those deployments, which tend to occur in August or September, then what it does, what the flow on is, that those firefighters who may have been on leave, may not have taken leave, or may be involved in prescribed burning during the spring and may not be available for that activity. So there are secondary impacts, if you like, but we haven't had a situation where the crossing of the seasons or the extending of the seasons has led to non-availability.
So, Anna, what's the Commission likely to hear today?
Well, it's completely focused on the question of aerial firefighting today, Andrew. So we've heard this evidence this morning about the pressure on resources and how that communication needs to happen to bring aircraft into different fire zones. And as the day unfolds, I think we'll be hearing more about that, and no doubt more about what resources will be needed into the future, because we're hearing through this Commission process about more intense fire seasons to come, and the resourcing will need to be there to deal with those as they unfold.
Anna, thanks very much. Our reporter Anna Henderson in Canberra. When the COVID-19 pandemic hit Australia, Olympic rower Josh Booth joined the effort to fight